Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to another Marvel Legendary unboxing. If comic books do anything, they always have you ask one question: what if? This set is based off of the Marvel Studios What If Disney Plus TV series. But what's really cool about it is because that was an animated thing, this uses illustrations. So it somewhat bridges the gap between being able to play with all the comic book art legendary stuff and the cinematic stuff, because you could graphically fits in great with all the comic book stuff, which is really awesome. But because it's technically part of the Marvel Studios line, you could also just mix in with those ones if you'd like to. So it sort of gives you a little bridge of a gap. The other really cool thing about this box set is it's a core box set. This is the fourth official core box set. You had the original one that came out that started the game, just called Legendary. They later updated it with a villain set, which is a really cool idea, but it did get abandoned. They kind of just started letting villains play as heroes, which I wish they would re-release that set, just have all the characters as hero cards instead, so all the terminology is the same. That would be fantastic. The third one is when Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 came out, which lets you start playing the cinematic characters with the realistic movie art, pictures and photos and stuff. And then this should be the official fourth one. So it's really cool. They're finally giving an updated one for people. It is I believe, the 10th anniversary of Legendary, which is awesome as well. This is also neat because it's a different style box. It's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, a little bit, it's a long box, but it's also a little bit, condensed thing. So it's meant to hold your cards, but it's not going to hold every single set. But this is a great way for someone that's interested in a Marvel game that hasn't bought one before. They can jump in. So just in case this is someone's first thing, what exactly is this game? Legendary is a deck building game. What's that mean? Very simple. I'm going to set this down instead of holding it. Very simple. The simple, quick explanation for what a deck building game is. Everyone starts with a basic set of the same cards, which are usually used to purchase other cards or defeat other cards in the set. This one has both. Some mechanics don't have. Some games don't have both. But everyone starts out with roughly the same exact deck of cards. Then as you play, you purchase or gain new cards throughout the game. So then once you start getting further into the game, maybe turn by turn 5, turn 10, turn 20, whatever, everyone will have a different deck. So it makes every gameplay is going to be unique, because you're always going to get brand new cards and you switch up different things, and every player is always going to have it was a semi-unique experience. You're all drawing from the same group of cards, but you can kind of tweak your deck this way and that way. If you find a card you don't like, don't buy it the next time you play. So this is. And then how you win varies from game to game. In this particular one, you are actually playing as a group of heroes. You mash 5 different group decks of heroes together. You get to draw different ones. And you are playing to defeat a mastermind and their scheme. You have to defeat the mastermind before all the villains escape the city, or the mastermind completes their scheme. It's a 100% co-op game, which is very fun. You can play. There are ways to play competitively in this as well, but it's based on being a cooperative game, which is really cool. So the other just big difference between some other games you might be familiar with, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, things like that, and something like this, is those games are called constructive deck games. You sit at your table, you build your deck before you sit down and play with other people. And then you play the game. Each person already has their deck 100% made, designed how they want to play it. This one, you earn it as you go along. So that's the big difference. All right, so what do we got in here? So in this box, we're gonna have a lot of stuff. Besides having be a core set, so it's going to give us 350 playable cards. Which means we're going to get 8 different heroes to choose from. You only play with 5 each time. So you can play You can't quite play 2 full games, but you can at least swap out some of the characters each time. There are 4 masterminds. There's 4 different villains to play, so you can play against that each time. 5 different villain groups. You have some different villains to play against. A rulebook. This also comes with a playmat. This is also what makes this a great way to start the game out if you've never played, because you're going to get this giant playmat, which we'll pull out and look at. But yeah, you get this huge playmat. Tell you where all the different cards go on this and that. Is it necessary to have a playmat to play this game? Absolutely not. But this definitely makes it a great thing. So down here we do have ages 14 plus, 1 to 5 players, and 30 to 60 minutes. I always remember that time is based on if you've played the game a few times and you know how to play it. To be 100% honest, that time, if you do poorly, could be 5 minutes. And I'm not even joking there. Because if you draw a bunch of bad cards in a row, because you're pulling cards from a random deck, you could end up getting a bad string and just getting annihilated in the first few turns. That just means you shuffled your deck bag. Which, anyone that's played games with me knows I shuffle my decks terribly, apparently. So this kind of stuff happens. That's not a common thing, not trying to scare anyone away. Just, it's a game, it can happen. But yeah, typically I'd say 30 to 60 minutes. But again, this is relying on people that know the rules of the game, know the cards at least a little bit, but at least even if you don't know every card, you at least know the base mechanics, and the different keywords for the set. So then if you buy an expansion pack and add this into it, that time might immediately increase a little bit if you haven't played that expansion before, because you're changing up different characters and keywords every time. Yeah, so that's that. So let's go ahead and hop into this box and see what's in here. So, other cool thing about this is, again, it works as a deck box. So we're going to get our rule book. We have a slot here with some foam blocks, which are really nice, and our deck of cards. So there's a lot of, so it's like, oh, there's not many cards for this full box. Well, the playmat takes up half of the box. But yeah, so that's kind of neat there. So it's also the fact, though, is that you have this foam box in here. There's a big one here. There's a couple of big ones here. So as you buy more expansions, you can pull these out and put new ones in there. The only, I would say, 2 downsides right here you're looking at this are, one, is that since these blocks are so big, you might end up with a little bit of gap between each one. They do make smaller blocks of foam. They're about half the size. So you know, I sometimes pick these up in other games and stuff. I have so many left over from other games, so it's kind of nice. That's not a major bad part of it. It's just if I pull this out and then if my next deck isn't that big, I'm going to have a little bit of leeway in there. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other thing would be is there's no dividers. So I know the very original base game came with dividers. You might still be able to go buy them from the Upper Deck website, or you could just buy your own generic dividers to put in here just to separate each hero out, starter cards, other different types of decks, just that when you pull them out, you can play them. I personally won't be using this box. I have my own storage system because I have every other set. But there's that. So yeah, we're going to have a little spoilers on some of the cards. We get like 2 different decks of cards here. Now, they are the same card, but these actually very well might be the exact same decks of cards because you get duplicates. That's just one way they package them. And then this is probably like the 3rd set of cards. This is probably all the bad guy cards. But we will hop into those as well. What I want to also test out, as long as we're here, I have some different game here, but I have like pro sleeved cards. Just to show that they will fit in here as well. So if you want to sleeve cards will fit in here. There's enough of a leeway in there, so that's nice. Now, if you use penny sleeves, like I used to use on all my cards, I don't think I have any. Let me grab one here. So I got a one-piece card here. Good old Magellan. These are the really cheap cards you can buy if you want to sleeve your cards, but you don't want to spend a bunch of money buying these higher quality sleeves. You can buy penny card sleeves. They're $1. They're called penny because they're $1, about $1 for 100 of them. So about a penny a piece. The difference is, just as a clarification here, is you can see on the top here, they do stick over quite a bit farther. The edges aren't as bad. They do hang out a little bit farther. Plus, there's a little bit, they're not as rigid, so there's a little bit more of a gap in there. Or sliding room. Like, these cards aren't going to slide very much because they're so rigid. Plus, they're all clear on the back versus this. That doesn't matter for this game because all the backs of all the cards are the same. But some games that might make a difference. Now, problem is if I put my penny sleeve in here, this top piece is going to kind of fold over a little bit. So you're going to end up with a bunch of cards just folded over tops. It's not going to wreck the cards at all, but it is just something to keep in mind. If you do want a sleeve, that might be an option for some early gamers. I personally am upgrading most of my games into these types of sleeves just because they're a little bit more durable and they fit boxes. They don't make games to fit penny sleeves. All right, so we're going to go over the rules here. And then we will go over the cards later. I'll probably do like a part 2 video. So this is taking off. Now this is one other difference here than some of the other sets. Is this box here is now actually part of the box, so you can't take out the playmat deck and add more room for other cards. But we're gonna throw that back there. And we are going to pull out this giant map. Trying to move some of my other stuff out of the way. This got way bigger than I thought it was. So I'm going to zoom my camera out here a little bit, as much as I can. You actually see how big this map is. There is a spot over here for some extra decks of cards. There's 6 spots here for specific stacks of cards. On the other side, there's a spot for 4 other stacks of cards. And then in the middle, we have, it's called your city and the HQ, and this is where your main game cards are played at. So this is actually, yes, it tells you right where everything goes. It's really helpful to remind. And what's nice is with the background here, it's not really distracting from the game. Some of the other legendary playmats have like lots of grandiose, cool comic book scenes, like Avengers versus Thanos or the X-Men versus Dark Phoenix, and they look really neat. But there's so much going on that, like, also then throwing down a bunch of cards on here can be kind of distracting. Now, this is a neoprene mat, so this is going to be very high quality. It's going to last you a while. It's also nice about neoprene mats is your cards kind of pick up a little bit easier than laying on the table. So it's a nice little bonus to have. So it is one thing that adds to the cost of this set. All right, so I'm going to kind of go through, I'm going to pause the video for a second, open up some of these cards here so we can kind of go through them, and we're going to then go through the rule book. So one sec. All right, so you've seen maybe some of the pictures, some of the cards, whatever, from on the boxes. But before I go any farther into this video, kind of, a basic how to play the game, I'm not going to go through, step-by-step turn exactly, but I'm going to kind of look over the basics of the game and all that stuff for you. Since this is based off a TV series, this is your one and only warning, at least in this video, of spoilers. Now, there's not going to be any, maybe direct plot spoilers of, like, exactly this happens to this or this happens to that. But being the fact that you will see characters from each different episode, you'll see villains from different episodes. Some of their cards or abilities will reference things that happen in the show because they're literally using screen caps. There might be potential spoilers for the entire series or specific episodes. So I don't want you to get ruined. If you don't want that, don't watch this video, I guess, until you go watch the show. It's been out long enough at this point that you've had plenty of opportunities. But maybe in case you're falling on this late, welcome. Come watch it first, or hey, watch this video first. Watch the next video where I go through all the different cards exactly. See if there's something that looks interesting, then go check it out. So, all right, we're gonna hop into this. But before I jump into the actual rules, I want to just look at this. I have all the different decks laid out. There are, I count 39 different decks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 29. 29 different decks of cards. Now, that might seem daunting to start. Holy crap, there's so many. It's not really as bad as it seems because a few of the decks are status decks. They're out in every single game. They're just decks that are there. They're always available. Maybe that's something that triggers and draws a card from it. They're a lot of the same piles. Like we have some of these cards here, your starting cards. So this is what you start with your hand with. We have some cards up in the top extra corner up there, which are, I'll go into specific all these later. But the very top up there, they stay out all the time. This bottom row is your hero. You're not going to use all of them. Like, these are your villain groups. You only use a certain number each time you play. Same thing, like, we have 4 masterminds. You only play 1 each time. So, although it seemed like a lot of cards, once you start stacking these up and doing this, and then depending on how many players, your actual decks will be like, maybe like a 50, 60 card deck instead. But it's kind of neat. Just so there is also a lot of variety in each one of these. Alright, so we're going to kind of just do a quick overview. Now, they do have this at the beginning, so if you've played this before, you can go ahead and skip all this. Oops. Otherwise, they had some brand new stuff. And, some of these are just updates. So if you're familiar with Legendary, here are some key updates. There's an updated quantity of card stacks for each number of players to give the game with larger numbers more time to win. For 4 to 5 players, there will be a warm-up round. If you don't house rule and play this already, you definitely need to. There's now a starting HQ Mulligan card, just to help, again, little things that they've learned over the last 10 years, essentially, to make the game a little bit easier. There's also solo mode adds a little bit of alternate rules. So it's fun. You can play solo. You're basically playing against the deck, it's against the villain deck, but you're changing some of the rules to make up for the fact there's not other players doing stuff. So, how to win the game. Players must work together to fight the evil mastermind 4 times. Each fight takes 1 mastermind's 4 face-down tactic cards. When the mastermind has no more tactics, the players have won the game. Fighting villains and rescuing bystanders along the way earns players additional victory points. If the mastermind is defeated, then all players win as a group. The player with the most victory points is the most legendary hero of all. So this is where it is co-op, but it can be semi-competitive. This is one of the modes. There's another expansion for the game that actually lets someone play as the villain. I'm not going to worry about that in this one because it's not in this set. But yeah, so then you add up these victory points again. You can be like, oh, player 1 had the most victory points. They defeated the most things, so they're like the MVP of the game. But like everybody won as a team. Because if you spend too much time just doing everything to yourself and not helping your team out, you might have a really killer deck. You might be able to do a lot of stuff, but if they all fail on their turns, you're going to lose the game. So you have to play as a team. How the mastermind works, or wins. So, unlike other games, is a game itself fights back against players. Evil masterminds like Hank Pym Yellowjacker, Ultron Infinity isn't played by a player, instead by the game itself. So this is a fun thing because no one has to play as the bad guy. The mastermind works to accomplish an evil scheme throughout the game. Every scheme has an evil win condition, which tells you how the mastermind completes their scheme. If the evil scheme is completed, the mastermind wins the game. All other players lose. If this happens, then the victory points don't matter and no player wins. The other way you can actually lose the game is if the villain deck runs out. So you can't stall the game out to the point where, okay, now there's no more villains, we can just spend time buying cards. Alternatively, you can also lose if your hero deck runs out. So again, if you're just buying cards, trying to make your decks bigger and bigger and bigger, hoping it'll eventually get enough stuff, you will also lose the game. So there's multiple ways to lose the game. They do have a little guide here, who you should start with to play against, mastermind scheme, what heroes you should play, what villains you should play with for your first game. And this is just if it's up to 5 players, who you should add. It's just their way to kind of make the game a little bit easier. Game setup, each player will get 8 shield agents and 4 shield trooper cards. So each player starts with the exact same 12 card deck. I kind of mentioned some of these decks are always available. Shield officers, bystanders, and wounds, and we'll go over all these in a little bit more detail in a minute. Masterminds and schemes. So you're going to pick one mastermind at random out of the 5, or whoever you want to fight against. You don't have to necessarily do random. Put them on the mastermind, say, tuck the 4 matching mastermind cards face down underneath in a random order. This is also something that makes the game very interesting, because every time you defeat them, you draw a random card you get, which have a various effect. So if I play the same character 2 times in a row, I might not even get the same exact effects 2 times in a row. So like one could really hurt you, and then the next game that might be the last one you draw, so it didn't hurt you as much. So it's kind of an interesting thing there. Then you pick a scheme. There's usually 4 schemes in every set. Put it face up on the scheme space. Each scheme has a setup. It specifies how many twists to use. Put that many scheme twists into the villain deck. So now we're starting to build the villain deck. The scheme is going to tell you how many, is going to give you an idea of how many scheme twists you have to do, because they're going to vary from kind of harder, not necessarily harder difficulty, just how the scheme works. But it also may change the number of heroes or villain groups, because some of them get some very interesting gameplay. So it's not, so it takes it from just defeat the mastermind 4 times, to there might be a fun example, a couple examples from other sets. Is there's one where you get to play, you have 2 different rows of 2 different villain decks you have to play against. There's another one where you're actually resetting the game board up to play a baseball game. There are some that you have to fight against hordes of zombies, which I think there's one in this set actually. Wink, wink. There's so many different ones. There's somewhere like a hero goes into the deck and you have to fight against that hero, or if you have to fight an additional hero, there's some that add extra heroes to your deck, so you have more options to fight against them. So a lot of variations. Then we'll also add 5 master strikes. There's always 5, they'll always be in the deck. So this will make sure your villain's ability can tick off enough times. Then we want to add villain groups and villain henchmen. The big difference between the villain groups are your named characters you're going to fight, like here they're showing Zombie Iron Man. Villain henchmen are more of the generic beatdown guys. The Hand Ninja, Sentinels, here we have some drones, various things like that. Guys that are going to be like, when heroes fight them, there's like a bunch of them. So there's always 10 of those. Then it shows you how to then add these into your deck to make the villain deck. So if you're playing 4 players, you have 4 villain groups, 2 groups of henchmen, and 8 bystanders. We didn't add that. And how many hero decks you use. This tells you basically how you set up the game. So then you have to refer to the scheme, which might change it. So then the villain deck will comprise of the number of villain groups you have, the number of henchmen groups, you throw them in there, a number of specific bystander cards, so it's that way the bystanders can fall in there and get captured, your 5 steam twists, your 5 master strikes, the number of steam twists you have, and that creates your villain deck. So every time you draw a card from there, you could get something that can help the steam, something to help the mastermind, an easy henchman villain, a harder villain from the villain group. So you get a bunch of different options in there. Alright, I'm not going to read the 1-player stuff, but then the hero deck, to build that, just check the game table to see how many you pick. Pick that number of heroes, add all 14 of their cards to the hero deck. Then you shuffle them all together. So here we have, 5 different characters. We have Thor, Captain Carter, Black Widow, Doctor Strange. You shuffle them in there, then each player draws from the same deck. that's basically how to shuffle the hero deck. Place it face down, put 5 cards in the hero deck face up, and then face HQ. So you always have 5, which works as a store to buy from. And then each person draws a hand of 6 cards from their deck. So you have 12 cards, you draw half your deck. So then your second turn, you'll draw the other half of your deck, and then you'll have to shuffle it. Alright, so we're going to go over quick how to play, and then we'll kind of break down and look at some of the other cards. Specifically how some of them work. We're just going to run through there. So your how to play is play the top card of the villain deck. So the villain always comes out. They can do stuff, interact, change things on the table. Then 2, you play cards from your hand. You either fight villains or recruit new heroes. And then 3, you discard all your hands, any cards you played, and you draw a new set of cards. Now this is, again, something that's different than other games like Magic or Pokemon, things like that. With a deck building game, you always discard everything in your hand, everything in play, every turn you start with a fresh new hand. That way, makes your deck rotate faster. Once your deck is empty, if you ever have to draw from it, you reshuffle your entire discard pile. Now all them cards you purchased and recruited are going to be in your deck. And now you can hopefully get better and better cards. And then you keep repeating this as your deck gets better. So yeah, we're I'm not going to get too much into the rest of this, so basically we'll play the field and look at how that all works. So let's actually look at some of these cards before we get too much into everything else. So we're going to look at the 2 basic starting cards here. One sec. Alright, so first what we're going to do is just look at our 2 starting cards. Just an idea of what's on the basis of cards that you are going to play. So these are your hero cards, defined by the word hero. So the top one will be the name of the card, Shield Trooper and Shield Agent. The subtype below tells what group it belongs to. Up in the top corner, we have what team they belong to. So this set is only going to contain 2 different teams. It's going to have the Shield cards, which are your basic cards. And then the main team, which is the Guardians of the Multiverse, for the What If set. If you buy other legendary stuff, you can get lots of other teams. Avengers, X-Men, Spider-Friends, Fantastic Four, Heroes of Asgard, Wakandans, Guardians of the Galaxy. So a lot of other different teams that you can mix and match and play around with. Another same thing on each one is we have down here is your little gold coins that have a 0. This is a recruit cost. This is how much you have to spend in recruit points to purchase these cards. These cards are 0 because they're starter cards. They start in your hand. They're not available elsewhere. And then we have 2 other different symbols. We have a 1 with 3 slashes, and we have a 1 with stars. Stars are recruit points. They're basically your currency. They're how you buy cards, and you get new cards from your deck. The slashes are for fighting. This is so you can earn more points to defeat more villains. So again, these cards aren't very good, but they're going to get you to purchase more cards. One deck of cards that's always available is the Shield Officer. So you can see he costs 3. So this is Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and we have Agent Coulson. So at the beginning of the game, if I grabbed 3 of my Agent Coulsons here, my Shield agents, and I spent all 3 points, I could purchase a Nick Fury Shield Officer card. Then he goes into my discard pile. Later, when I draw him, now he's worth 2 points. So basically, Nick Fury is worth 2 of the Agent Coulsons. So for me to get... So instead of having to play, if I have 6 cards in my hand, if I had 2 of him, that's 2 points. Or I could have 1 of him and 1 other additional card. So upgrading like that's not always a bad thing. Usually you probably want to buy one of the other heroes because they're going to work together with your other cards and have more effects than just purchasing. But this is a nice card just in case maybe you had some extra points. You can always upgrade, and then another big thing you like to do in these games is get rid of your starter cards so you're only drawing your superheroes. So like as the game progresses, you prefer to be drawing your Captain Carters and your Thors and Black Widows versus drawing these generic Shield agents and troopers. So with that, we're also going to look at one of our heroes we can buy. So they have a lot of the same exact stuff as the other characters. We have our cost down here. So this Thor only cost. This is Party Thor. So that's the group. That's the name of this character. And then the top card is what his actual card name is. This is the ability. So Forecast says Thunder. We have the team up here. The Guardians of the Multiverse. Then we do have a color. So I noticed the starter deck cards are gray and they don't have a symbol. They're called gray cards. They're basic. They don't cost anything. The other sets have 5 different colors. The 5 different colors represent different types of what the cards are going to do. So green cards are strength. They're going to usually be cards that have higher attack or do something with attacking. Yellow are instinct, and red are covert. They're going to be instinct is kind of, I mean, it just sort of determines what type of thing a character might be doing. Like an instinct is going to be more of like a reactionary type ability. Typically, covert is going to maybe be trying to like change stats, mess with things on the field, get around abilities. Tech cards are usually going to add extra bonuses. They're also gray, which gets a little confusing. And blue are ranged cards, so they're usually a character performing a ranged attack. Now, it doesn't necessarily directly correlate to anything on the game. There is nothing in the game that is like attack close or far. It's just kind of showing the attack. He's using a thunder attack. It's a ranged type attack. You also see he produces 3 recruit points here. So now, if these are your 2 options to purchase, it would make more sense to purchase the Party Thor card. It costs 1 less, and it's going to produce 1 more recruit point every turn you play it. So it's definitely a better buy. Plus, it has an ability as well. So this ability says, to play this, you must put another card from your hand on top of your deck. So there's kind of the drawback. Is, yes, it costs more, or costs less to purchase. Once it's in your deck, this cost means absolutely nothing. But it will get you another recruit point, but you have to put a card on top of your deck. Which sounds bad, because you're getting 1 less card to play. But if the card I drew, like, if I had these 2, that's 3 recruit points. But if I had these 2, I have 3 recruit points. I could put him back on top of my deck, and I know I could use him my next turn. Plus, there's a bunch of other cards in here, and other sets, that give you bonuses for whatever cards on top of your deck, or you can draw a card on your deck, or draw it the next turn. You'll know it's coming up the next turn. There's lots of benefits to putting cards back on top of your deck. So it's not really as much of a hindrance as you think it is. And then at the very bottom, some of the cards have kind of in smaller text, is flavor text, which is just maybe describing what's on the card or a quote, but it has no gameplay value. And then the other card we want to look at is the villain card. So this is a henchman villain versus a villain group. So these guys all go together. The Giants of Jotunheim. So we're going to have a couple of things that kind of match from the other cards. So instead of having cost, they have a red border just to help separate them from what the other cards are. But on the bottom here, they have a 3 with 3 slashes, which matches the Maria Hill Trooper here. So what that means is they take 3 attacks to defeat. So to buy that Nick Fury card, I needed 3 stars. To defeat the Giants, I need 3 slashes. So I'd have to get 3 Maria Hills to be able to beat him. But to obviously counter that is you can end up getting cards like this Thor that have 3 attacks. So this Thor can immediately beat him versus this other Thor has recruiting power. So there are ways to upgrade your heroes or buy new heroes to be able to defeat these cards easier than playing multiple cards. They also have, villains typically have 1 or 2 different things, or sometimes both, sometimes neither, but they usually have a fight ability and ambush. So ambush isn't out, not everyone has it, but ambush means when they come into play, they do this effect. So as soon as the Giants appear, each player discards top 3 cards of their deck. So we just had that Thor card, which let you kind of put a card on top of your deck to set up a later turn or a combo. The Giants are going to turn around and get rid of them cards, so they mess up your combos. So that's kind of a bummer there. But then they have a fight ability. It says you may KO a gray hero from your discard pile. This lets you get rid of, again, these shield agents. So if I had that Thor that gave me 3 attack, I could get rid of the shield trooper. Then I'm going to not draw that as often. And I'm going to draw more of my Thor cards, which is going to make my deck better. I'll be drawing that 3 attack more consistently, so I might get a 2-3 attacks instead of a 3 and a 1 attack. And the KOs just happen whenever you fight them and you beat them. Okay, so that's the basis of those cards. There are other cards in here we have to look over as well. But we're going to kind of look over some more of the rules yet. But now you kind of have an idea of what some of those basic cards look like. But let's hop back into the rules. There are villain cards. Which the difference is they just get rid of the extra little border on the outside. That's just, again, a quick visual way to tell the difference between a villain group and a villain henchman. Otherwise, they have the same idea of what they do. Alright, so when a villain enters the city, they enter the sewer, and they're gonna go to the bank, the rooftop, the street, and then the bridge. And then pushes other villains forward if necessary. Each of the 5 spaces can only hold 1 villain. Whenever a villain enters the city, if there's already another villain there, the existing villain pushes forward 1 space to make room. So, in this case, it's showing if one character comes in. Proxima Midnight came in, she's going to shove Cull Obsidian over, move this guy over. So everyone's going to move 1 space over unless there's a blank space. They're not going to move the last character, but they'll go keep pushing everybody. This becomes important because you don't want the villains to escape the city. This means defeating them before the turns, defeating them before they turn, blah blah blah, defeating them before they push out of the city. So like here we're showing the city is completely full. So when the new villain comes in, it's going to push everyone out, and this one's going to escape. Why is escaping villains bad? Because what happens is when the villain escapes, KOs a hero that costs 6 or less from the HQ. So this gets rid of your cards that you have purchasable. It won't get rid of your most powerful cards, but if this happens too much early on, you're going to start losing some of your better cards that are harder to get. And also, it's going to run your deck out of cards quicker. So if you keep losing them too often, you're going to keep losing cards. If they have a bystander, then each player must also discard a card from their hand as a penalty, which then makes your next turn weaker because you have 1 less card to play. Now, there are occasionally strategic advantages. Sometimes, if you can defeat a villain and you have nothing else to do, there's no reason not, generally no reason not to. But there are occasional times when you might decide it's worth taking that hit, because maybe the only villain you can defeat has a fight effect that's not good for you. Like we just looked at them, Giants says KO one of your gray heroes. Maybe turn 2 or 3, that might not be worth doing, and losing one of your cards early on. Maybe the only one that's in your discard pile is your Nick Fury you just bought. Maybe you don't want to sacrifice him right off the bat. So there is sometimes reason to do that. Thirdly, though, what you have to watch out for is a villain has an escape effect. So it's like ambush and fight. Some might have an escape, which means then they trigger an extra terrible effect that happens if they leave the field. Those guys you definitely don't ever want to let go. Unless, again, there are, depending on sex, there are some that might not hurt you that much. They might say, if they escape, everyone discards a card. You as a group might be like, you know what? I think we can afford to let that guy leave. You know, like we can defeat the mastermind instead of defeating a villain in the city. So there might be some reasons like that. So we did read the ambush effect. We talked about that. If a villain deck is a bystander card. So what are bystander cards? Let's look at some of the other different cards in this set here quick. Alright, so we just mentioned bystander cards. So there's 2 different types in the game. There's the basic one over here, and there's the special one over here. They play, for most of the gameplay reasons, they play exactly the same. They're just bystander cards that will affect different things. So what they are, they're just various people or maybe special types of people that are in the game that you add them into the villain deck. If they get drawn from the villain deck, a villain captures them, then the villain takes them with them. If the villain escapes with them, you get penalized because they stole an innocent person. There are other effects in the games that might let you do things that play off of bystander cards, such as maybe rescuing bystanders, then they go in your victory pile. That more or less has to, unless it triggers other abilities, or sometimes you say, hey, if you have a certain number of bystanders in there, or every time you rescue a bystander, you get an effect or stuff like that. The other thing they do is the same thing we did see on the villain cards, is that little numbers here in the red circle. Those are your victory points. So every time you rescue one, you gain an extra victory point. So if for some reason this Giants of Jotunheim had captured Happy Hogan, you would now get a victory point for him and a victory point for Happy Hogan instead of just one for the Giant. So that's kind of, if you want to play at that competitive mode. I generally don't worry about that. Even at the end of the game, I don't bother to add that up. But some people like to. The special bystanders also have, as you can see, some extra text. It says, for Happy, it says, when you rescue this bystander, read the top card of the villain deck. If it's a Master Strike or Steam Quest, you may shuffle that deck. So this is kind of thing. So when you rescue him from either from the full bystander deck, which you shuffle all them cards together, or you rescue him from a villain, you get this extra effect. So they kind of just give you little bonuses versus playing that. Now, as you buy more and more Marvel Legendary sets, you can find more and more special bystanders. And then if you're like me, what I like to do is I generally just start replacing all my regular bystanders with all special, and then sprinkling a few of the regular ones. So more often than not, I'm getting a guy that has an ability versus the other way around, where the ones with abilities are less, because I think it makes the game more fun. I would rather have to have Spider-Man or Captain America rescuing Happy Hogan, or Pepper Potts or Mary Jane, or some of the other sets to like non-name characters like the civil worker or the bank teller or the circus performer. Have them rescuing special people, and I gain a bonus from it. So it's kind of fun. The Happy Hogan mentioned two other types of cards which we read about, which are the Master Strike and Steam Twist. So what happens though is when you draw one of these cards from the villain deck, they trigger a special effect on either the Mastermind card for his Master Strike, showing the villain Mastermind literally getting down and dirty, coming in to help the standard villains, or the Steam Twist, which is their steam advancing forward and something happening. And there's gonna be a bunch of different ones of each one of those. So I'm gonna take a look at the Steam quick, so we have an idea of what we're doing. So this is one of our Steams. So this, if you're playing Collecting Interstellar Zoo, you're gonna have 11 twists in your deck. Just as a different kind of setup, for some of these other ones, if we have Trash Earth with the Hugest Party, this you only have 6 twists, but has other setup rules. You'll include the Party Thor hero and Intergalactic Party Animals villains. So it has different setup mechanics for each one. And then you can see some of these can get a little hectic on what they do. So then the other things you're going to have on there is what happens when you draw a twist. Sometimes what happens, you specifically get which twist you get. And then what happens if evil wins. So for the zoo, evil wins when the zoo has 5 heroes. So there's no direct way to defeat a Steam. There's not do X thing, the Steam is defeated. The only way you can generally defeat a Steam is if it has something that says when this happens, and you can somehow prevent that by eliminating enough cards so it can't happen. But usually they're going to play right to the end. So here, this one says each player. So every time you draw a twist, it says each player reveals their hand, starting with the current player. Then clockwise, the first player to have one of this kind of hero in their hand or discard pile stacks it next to the steam stolen from the zoo. So the first time you draw a steam twist, each player is going to reveal their hand looking for a strength hero for their hand or discard pile and stacks it next to it. Just the first one. So if player 1 doesn't have one, it'll check player 2. If player 2 doesn't have one, player 3 has it, they'll use his. And then turn 2, the second time a steam twist comes up, it'll be instinct, then covert, then tech, then range. Then when you hit 6, 7, 8, and 9, they start having costs, which are going to be maybe a little bit easier or harder to hit. And then for steam 10 and 11, which is just going to be a recruit or attack icons, which pretty much will hit. So the only way to potentially defeat this is they have to have 5 heroes. Is so if you get to the point where you're past the you hit the 7th twist, which means you're going to be 4 left, and you for some reason only have, you don't have any heroes, and you haven't had to place any heroes yet. Or as you hit the later ones, like if you hit steam number 10, or you pick twist number 9, and you only have one, you only have 2 heroes in there, you could potentially beat the odds. Just for the last 1 or 2 might not matter. But it's not going to be like an early on. It's nothing you can actively do. It's because that twist comes randomly out of the deck at the beginning of your turn. If one of the 4 players or how many people are playing, have one of them cards, it's going to add to it. So there is a potential that you could have maybe get to the point where, we're down to 10 and 11, so you have 2 cards left, and you only have 2 heroes in there. So even if both of them trigger, there'll only be 4 heroes, so there's no way to lose the game. So then you don't even care about steam twists anymore. But again, you're not going to know that until probably right at the very end. Because you could miss the first 5, be lucky and just not have any of them cards in there, and you could get hit with any of the next 6. So it's like, that's kind of how that's going to work. And they're all very different ways like that. Like, we just looked at that Party Thrower one. As you play different cards, there's, it's like we have Marvel Zombies. I'm not going to read through all of it. But this one does have, when evil wins, when there are 3 villains per player in the escape deck or the villain deck runs out. So that one's not going to be able to be beaten. Basically, you have to defeat the mastermind before that accumulates. So that can be some of the difficulty of the game. Then the next thing we want to look at quick here is we're actually going to look at one of the masterminds. So the mastermind here is going to have several different things on them. They will have mastermind, their name. They usually have a really high victory point cost or number. So you defeat them. So defeating 1 Hank Pym is going to get you more points than defeating 6 of them Jotunheim. Same as defeating 6 Jotunheim demons. Jotunheim giants. So you can kind of see if you are trying to play at competing point, defeating villain group characters, or defeating masterminds is going to earn you more points quicker than just defeating a bunch of henchmen. They have a mark in the bottom, just like other villains. So if I grab back my Jotunheim here, you can kind of see there's some of them matching ideals. But then they get rid of more of that red. So it's 2 red for henchmen, 1 red for a villain, no red for a mastermind. But mastermind don't generally enter the city either. So to defeat Hank Pym, I need to only generate 4, which isn't that much. But he has this asterisk, so it's going to make a difference. So he has a special effect on what he does. And then masterminds always have 2 other things. They have always lead and then master strike. So always lead means when you play them, that's what group has to come with them. So if we were fighting against Ultron Infinity, he always leads the Ultron Sentinels or Sentries. each group has their own. So it's always going to be one group because of the group that works best with that character. Then their Master Strike means every time you draw a Master Strike card, I just shuffle that back in this pile here somewhere, from the deck, which there's always 5 of them. So this will always hit 5 times no matter what. You do that effect. So it says each player here puts 3 0-cost cards from their discard pile on top of their deck. Yeah, so why is that necessarily a bad thing? You're putting cards back on your deck because it's putting your starter cards. It's basically making it so you can't find your better hero cards quicker. So like my deck could have like a Thor, a Captain Carter, a Black Widow sitting there ready to go on my next turn, and then you draw this, and now I have to play 3 shield agents instead. So I lose all my extra effects. So it does kind of hinder you a bit. And then he does have an extra ability. It says before each time you fight Hank Pym, you must track him down by discarding the top 6 cards of your deck, then paying 2 attack for each card you would discard that costs 0. If you don't pay this total, gain a wound and end your turn. So this is very interesting because he normally costs 4 to defeat, so you have to have at least 4 power to even attack him. But then you also have to be able to generate 2 for every 0 card cost. Now that means if you discard 6 and all 6 are 0 cost cards, that means you have to generate an extra 12 attack. So the way to get around this is by getting rid of your 0 cost cards. Because then if you have none, then now they only cost 4. It's very interesting on how that works. It says if you don't, you gain a wound. So wound is another card type we have to look at. We'll look at that in just a sec. So, if you defeat Hank Pym, you draw one of his 4 tactics cards. So, a tactics card will say Mastermind Tactic, and then who it belongs to, so you can pull them out very quickly. They'll have their own special name. They're all unique. Their victory points will match the Masterminds, and their attack will match their base amount, not his extra special ability. So, basically what happens is you sit underneath, you defeat that, you draw this version A. This is the card he used to defend against himself. You defeated it. This card goes in your victory pile. Mastermind stays out so you can fight him again. Otherwise, then this works like a villain. So there's like the 1 red part on it. It says fight. You may gain a hero from the HQ that costs 2 or less. So that's actually kind of beneficial. Some of them are beneficial. Some of them aren't. Like we have Revenge for Ancient Grievances, which says fight. The player with the most villains in their victory pile gains a wound, so that one actually hurts you. So some of these are very easy to play against, some kind of suck. That's kind of the fun of that. And I'm not going to go through all 4 of them right now. I do want to show off 2 other types of cards. Quick, we have just a regular villain. So this is a villain group. So it's Wolf Demon's the name of the villain card. It says it's a villain, so if it references. And then the group it belongs to, which is Strangest Demons. 2 victory points, cost 4 to defeat, and then it has fight, soul bond with another villain, KO one of your heroes. That's a special effect. Keyword we'll go into later when I'm reviewing all the cards and all that in the next video. But yeah, this just has a special ability. When you defeat him, you have to do this effect. In which KOs one of your heroes, which might let you KO one of your gray heroes, but for some reason you don't have one. That might be one of these instances where, is it better to let him leave and just KO a card from my HQ which I don't own, or do I risk losing a good card that's in my hand, or I've played? And then the last card, I want to show you the last different type of card, or card type, are wounds. So we did have a couple of cards that mentioned gaining wounds. Wounds are basically cards that just sit in your deck and take up your hand. They don't do anything. They don't give you attack. They don't give you any defense. But they don't do anything outside of that to harm you. But what happens is when I draw my new 6-card hand, if I have a wound, now I only have 5 cards in my hand that are playable. If you end up getting 3 wounds in your hand, now I have 3 of 6 cards to play. So the more and more wounds your character gets in their deck, the less and less you're going to draw cards needed to be played. So if you have a way to get rid of them, that's great. There are some characters that actually benefit from having them. They will have um, special abilities that trigger off of having wounds. I don't know specifically what character has one of those. Let me see if I can find one really quick. Nope. I thought maybe I could find a character that had one really quick. But yeah, I know like in general games, lots of times like the Hulk will have an ability. It'll basically be like, if you have a wound, you may KO it to do this effect. So Hulk likes getting wound cards because then he gains additional power from having them wounds. So there is stuff like that. So wound has no cost. But the wound does have a special effect called healing. If you don't recruit or fight anything on your turn, you may KO all wounds from your hand. So if you start getting 2, 3, especially if you get anytime you get higher than 3, you definitely want to do this. It's basically give up part of some actions on your turn to get rid of all these cards at once. If you only have one in your hand, you have to debate whether there's enough stuff that you can do to justify it. If you have enough attack power to defeat a villain or fight the mastermind, you should probably do that. If you have enough recruit points to be able to recruit something that you're really going to use, do that. Later in the game, you might not need to recruit as often, so you might be able to skip that half of it. But there's also a possibility you have you have three attack points and 3 recruit points in your hand just based on what you have. And there's nothing that's a low enough cost for you to buy a recruit. Then you might just spend it doing that. However, you can still play all of your cards and see what all your cards would do, because maybe you can play that, this triggers that, this triggers that, this draws you an extra card, that got you this. And then you could kind of see what you all have before you choose to recruit or attack. So you not just have to beginning of your turn have to be like, oh, I'm giving up my entire turn. You might have some effects to do, but you also might to choose not to play any of those cards, because maybe you're like, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice. I don't want to get more cards out of my deck that I might need for my next turn. So that is the basis of all of those. That is all of the different card types in the game. We can kind of go back to the rules here. So villain card, Steam Twist, we kind of went through all of them. Now note, villains do not get pushed forward when you play from the villain deck by a bystander, Master Strike, or Steaming Twist. So if a villain comes into play, all the villains move. If any of the other cards come in, you're going to get hit with a different effect of the Steam Twist or Master Strike, but luckily it doesn't push any of the villains, so sometimes that's kind of nice. Generally not, because the effect is usually worse than a villain leaving. Alright, so that's a villain coming into play. We went over step 1. Step 2 is playing cards from your hand and using them. It says, after you play the top card of the villain deck, it is time to play cards from your hand. Some of your cards produce attack points to let you fight villains. Others produce recruit points to let you gain more heroes. It says, each time you play a card in your hand in any order, one at a time. So you want to play them one at a time because there are certain effects that will trigger things that happen later in your turn. So I know newer players, when I play with them, I will just tell them, hey, if like when they're still learning, I'll be like, okay, just place your hand down, and I'll help them kind of walk through what cards they can do and what, but you still want to have them be in a specific order. Even though the end result might be, oh, I have 5 slashes and I have 3 stars, that's what I have for my things. But the effects on the cards matter. So the first couple of turns when you just have your starter cards, you can just lay them all down because they don't do anything extra. But later on, you want to change them. One of the reasons is super powered abilities. So some of these cards are going to have special abilities on them that have little symbols with a colon and it says do this. You only gain that if you played a card with the previous ability. And we'll look at that in just a second here. We're going to kind of go through. So fighting and recruiting. To fight a villain, as you play a hero from your hand, you generate a pool of attack points. You can spend these to fight villains one at a time. You can only fight a villain if you have at least as many attack points remaining as that villain's attack number. You don't have to match up specific heroes you play against specific villains, and it doesn't matter which space it holds. So what I'm doing is I'm adding up the total. So if I have 2 party Thors out, they each have 3 attack powers, gives me a total of 6. I can spend that to defeat a 6 cost villain, 2 different 3 cost villains, or 3 different 2 cost villains. It doesn't have to be this Thor does 3 and then, oh, this guy only has 2, so now I have 1 left over. I can't, or if I have a 4 cost, I can spend a 3 from one, 1 from the other, and have the 2 left over. It doesn't matter how they're spread, just that you have them points. So that's how that basically works. You defeat them, they go to your victory pile after you do their effects. Recruiting works the exact same way. Spend recruit points to cost, gain to the hero pile, then it goes to your discard pile. It says, then refill the empty space in HQ with a new card from the hero deck face up. Whenever there's an empty space, for any reason, whether you buy a card, it gets KO'd, anything happens to it, you can always even recruit a hero, see what new hero replaces it, and then potentially recruit that new hero. And then finally, you discard your hand and draw 6 new cards. So at the end of your turn, you draw it. So this is kind of a neat thing, is you draw your hand at the end of your turn. That way, let's say you're playing a 4-player game. Although you do want to be kind of paying attention. You do want to be paying attention to what your teammates are doing, so you can kind of see what they're doing, see what they're buying, maybe help. Hey, I can defeat that guy, so if you can't, I can take him out. But it also gives you a chance to look at what cards are in your hand before your turn starts. So you're not drawing a card, having to stop, spend 5 minutes reading your cards before you play all your cards. Although, granted, you could stop beginning your turn, see what you have, kind of look at the board, but if 3 other players go, that board state is going to change. We talked about Mastermind and Mastermind Tactics already. End of the game, we talked about that stuff before earlier, and that is the end of the core game. So there are special rules and keywords we can get in this set, which I will go over during the actual, going through all the different cards because they're specific to this set. But there's a lot of different keywords. Some are from older previous sets, some are brand new as well. And then there's some of the specific stuff about bystanders we talked about. Wounds. Running out of cards. So this is an interesting thing to point out as well before we look at... I'm going to do like a little sample gameplay turn as well here before we end the video. If shield officers, bystanders, or wounds are decks that are always out, run out, continue as normal. Player would gain one of these decks. There aren't any more left. Then you just don't gain the card and the game continues. Don't take the extra pile. Copies out of the KO pile. So something's in the KO pile, it is removed from be able to grab unless something specifically says to do it. So for an example would be is if all the cards in the wound deck are used up, the heroes have taken enough punishment and the game is probably close to be complete. Yeah, there's like 20 some wound cards. If you've gained all of them and you haven't been, you could be healing them to KO them, so you don't have to keep running. But when they get KO'd, they don't go back to the pile. So you could eventually, if you're getting hit a lot and getting lots of wounds, you could eventually run the deck out. Then you don't have to worry about them effects anymore. But if you're getting hit that much, you're probably going to lose the game anyhow. Yeah, then various special abilities. This explains how revealing cards, things like that work. Printed cards. Not going to go through all the little nuanced abilities in this video. But let's look at this really quick. So we did kind of mention these. Strength heroes are green heroes with raw physical power, but also heroes with strength of will, determination, and strong leadership. Instinct are yellow, use savagery and quick reflexes to dominate combats. Some instinct heroes use superhuman senses to get an edge on their opponents. Covert heroes are red, use trickery and deception to outwit their foes. Some covert heroes also plan clever maneuvers or use superpowers to gain subtle advantages. Tech, which are black heroes, not gray, just technically they're black. Use heroes in advanced weaponry, incredible gadgets, and brilliant inventions, or next generation science. Ranged heroes Our blue unleash massive firepower. This includes bows, projectiles, energy beams, elemental powers, and mental assaults. Basic heroes are gray, include all starting shield heroes and officers. They count as heroes even though they don't get the job quite done as high-flying superheroes. And then this set contains the 2 teams of Guardians of the Multiverse. Unlikely group of heroes was handpicked by Uatu the Watcher to confront threats that could unravel the very parallel universe at once, and SHIELD, the Strategic Hazard Intervention Espionage Logistic Directorate, which that's changed thousands of times over the years. It's a clandestine paramilitary and spy organization led by director Nick Fury, works behind the scene to stop superpowered villains before they get out of hand. Alright, so then on the back here, they just do another quick reference. Your startup, how many cards you get, your mastermind tactics, building up your game, all that fun stuff. Alright, so I'm going to set up a quick turn here. Actually, before I do that, let's look at some more cards here. We're going to look at, we looked at Party Thor, so we're going to look at Party Thor again. I just want to point out a couple of things. So, there are 3 rarities of cards, and they're just listed as is based on the number of cards in the deck. Now, this game has a little bit different setup than a typical legendary set. Most legendary you have 4 different types of cards. You have 2 commons, which have 5 copies of each, an uncommon, which have 3, and a rare. This kind of changes it up a little bit to give you more variety on the cards. So you have 3 commons with 3 copies each. And you can tell they're common based on the fact they have a full border. So full blue all the way around. You can see some of Thor's different abilities. We'll go over these a little bit more in detail in the second part of the video. You get 2 uncommons, which have 2 copies each. So you get less of the uncommons, but you're going to get more of the rares. And now you can see the difference there is they have part of their border missing. So kind of like the villains, they lose part of their border, so it only has half. But they also have a lot higher costs. You can see now you have 6 and 5 costs instead of some of the other ones that had 2s and 3s. Although this one common here does also have a 5 as well, so there's some of that. And then finally you get the rare or the ultimate ability, which has no border around it, but you can still tell its color by its little symbol up top. And they're usually the most expensive, somewhere between 7 and 9. 1 per deck, but they are game changers. You get one of these, they're going, when you play it, every time you play it, it's going to probably have a giant effect. So the other thing we wanted to point out was the superpower symbol. So we did mention that before. So this has a blue symbol, and this has to do with playing cards in specific order. So when you play Thor or Asgardian Rager, when it actually plays out, you'll get 3 attack. If it's the first blue card you've played, that's all you get, is 3 attack. But if I had played, let's put it in the other order, if during my turn, I play my forecast says Thunder first, I gain my 3 recruit and do my ability, and then now because I've played a blue, I also get to activate this effect. So cross-dimensional rampage. Any player gains a wound this way, you gain 3 attack. So yeah, they kind of work together that way. So it can be any blue. It doesn't have to be a Thor and Thor. I could play any other character as a blue card, as long as it's a blue card first. And that's how those trigger off. So you're going to get bonuses based on playing different effects that way. So we do have another quick example there would be, we have this Star-Lord T'Challa, who, this is a multicolored card, which are kind of fun. So he's green and red. But then if we play him, first card of the game, so if we play him by himself, we have 0 attack. But it says choose one. You get empowered by strength or empowered by covert, which empowers a special ability that gets you extra attack based on cards in the HQ. But now if I've played both a strength and a covert card before this, I get to draw a card. So it gets a benefit, but you have to play 2 other ones. Now, potentially, I could play 2 of these fight or flights, and then I would get to have that ability because it's both colors. Those superpowers will only kick off once per every effect. So if we go back to our Thor's Asgardian Rager, if I played 3 blue cards and then I play this, I only get this ability once. But it does make a difference on that. And then the last thing I want to talk about for playing cards in order is I do want to look at these 2. So if I look at these 2, if I play these 2 in this order, Forecast as Thunder, then only Sun, what happens is I will gain my 3 recruit points, and then to play this card, you must put another card from your hand on top of your deck. So let's say if I do that, I then pick my other Only Sun, I put him back on top of my deck. Then you play Only Sun card, I get my 3 attack, so I have 3 attack to recruit to spend. It says, what if you get the attack power equal to the cost of the hero you revealed this way? So how what if works is you name a hero or a class type, and then you reveal the top of the card, the top of your deck, and if it's the card you pick, the class, which is strength, ranged, tech, or the hero, Party Thor, for example, or Star-Lord T'Challa, you get to draw that card. Otherwise, you can put that card on the top or bottom of your deck. So by combining these 2 in this direction, because I know I just put a Party Thor on top of my deck, it's going to help me for the fact is, 1, the what if, I can actually trigger that appropriately because I know what card there, so I can draw this card then. Oh, I picked Party Thor. Hey, look what card I drew. Now I got this Party Thor in my hand. So now I can play this again, and I get an additional 3 attack with that, and I get to use that ability again. Plus, because I put that Thor there, I knew it's equal to its cost. And he has a cost of 6. So I know I'd be gaining an extra 6 attack. So I'm gaining my 3 recruit, my 3 attack. The what if ability lets me reveal this card, which gives me an extra 6 attack. So I'm up to 9 attack. Plus I just drew this card. So I can go ahead and play him as well, getting an additional attack. So now I'm up to 12 attack. And I get a what if for another card. Even if I and let's say if I what if and I drew, that's my next card. I get 0 attack. Oh well, big deal, right? But I just got 9 attack, all that. So playing cards in specific order can make a difference. The reason why is if I played these in the opposite order, and if I did my what if, I'm going to gain 3 attack, but I don't know what my attack number is going to be. So again, if I drew that, and my first card I drew was my Shield Agent, I have 0 cost, I gain 0 attack. So now I just have my 3 attack instead of potentially having 6, and hitting the what if to draw a new card, because maybe I didn't guess, Shield Agent is my card. I thought I had a Party Thor coming. Then if I play this card, I still get my 3 recruit, and I have to discard another card from my hand. So now I actually lose a full card versus being able to draw that card back. So card order does matter. So this does make the game a little bit more strategic than just playing every card down. Again, though, I do recommend if you play this game, time you're helping people out the first time they're playing, let them play all their cards down. Maybe help them kind of decide. Just don't take their turn for them. Let them kind of figure out that that's what they need to do. If you're a bunch of brand new players all playing together, do the same idea. Play, it's player one's turn, let them play all the cards down, maybe let everyone kind of decide, hey, what makes the most sense, in what order, and because you're learning the cards at the same time. Alright, so I am going to do a quick reset of the table here. We'll look at the map. We're going to kind of play a few sample turns just to kind of see what the game looks like. And that'll be the end of the how to play video. Then you guys can come back for part 2. Alright, so I was going to do a quick gameplay thing. I'm going to separate that into the next video because the going through the rulebook took a little while longer than I thought it would. And then actually recording the video for how to, like, some sample turns was actually quite long, a little bit longer video than I thought. So I'm going to separate it into 2 parts. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed learning the rules, kind of figuring out how to play. If you have questions or comments, hit me up. I will try and answer them as best as I can. I'm not the game developer. I'm not a designer of it. So I can only say so much. And I can only give you my thoughts and opinions. I might not have the official answers. Just check Upper Deck or Board Game Geek to get some extra help that way. Then come back, check out the next video where I actually do like some sample turns and gameplay so you can kind of see how it's played. Alright, see you guys later. Bye.